John, a struggling barista working long hours to make ends meet, often saw the same faces at the cafe. One cold morning, he noticed a man shivering outside the door, clearly homeless. Feeling a sense of empathy, John quietly offered the man a warm cup of coffee, never expecting anything in return. Little did he know, this small act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would change his life forever. Just a few hours later, a group of men in suits entered the cafe, their presence joining the beginning of an unexpected twist in John's journey. Hi everyone, welcome to Life's Touching Stories. Today I'm excited to share a new story with you. John had worked at the small corner cafe for almost 2 years now. The days seemed to blend into one another, each shift the same as the last. The usual customers came in, ordered their coffees, then rushed out the door without so much as a glance. He often wondered if anyone noticed the tired eyes behind the counter, or the person who made their daily coffee. But on this cold morning, something caught John's attention. As he steamed milk for a latte, he glanced up at the window. There, huddled in a worn jacket, was a man who looked like he hadn't slept indoors in days. His face was pale, his hands trembling as he tried to warm himself in the cold. John knew that feeling, the cold, the exhaustion. Though he had never been homeless, he understood struggle. He hesitated for a moment. The cafe policy was strict about giving away free items, but something inside him pushed him forward. John made a cup of hot coffee. He walked over to the man outside and handed it to him without a word. The man looked up, his eyes filled with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice rough from the cold. John nodded, offering a small smile before heading back inside. It was just a cup of coffee, he thought, a small gesture, but it felt like the right thing to do. Beside the warmth of the cafe, life went on as usual. Customers came and went, but John's mind kept drifting back to the man outside. He wondered if the coffee had helped, if the man would find shelter for the night. He didn't dwell on it for long, though. There was always another order to fill. Hours passed. The morning rush slowed to a trickle, and the quiet hum of the cafe filled the air. It felt like any other day, at least until the door swung open. The bell above the cafe door chimed. John looked up from the counter. A group of men dressed sharply in dark suits walked in. Their presence immediately drew attention. They seemed out of place in the small, cozy cafe. The usual crowd was a mix of students, locals, and regulars, but these men had an air of importance about them. John's heart skipped a beat. He quickly wiped his hands on his apron, trying to appear calm. He wasn't sure what to expect. Were they here for a meeting? Or maybe they had the wrong place. One of the men, tall with silver hair and sharp eyes, approached the counter. "You're John, right?" he asked. His voice was steady, but there was something behind it. Curiosity, or maybe something more. John nodded slowly. "Yes, I'm John. Can I help you?" The man smiled slightly, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "We'd like to speak with you about something important. It won't take long. Do you have a moment?" John glanced around the cafe. It was quieter now, only a few customers lingering with their drinks. He didn't have much of a choice. "Sure. What's this about?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The man gestured to a table near the back. "Let's talk over there. It's a private matter." John hesitated for a second, then followed them. His mind raced with possibilities. What could they possibly want with him? He wasn't anyone special, just a barista trying to get by. They sat down at the table. The men in suits surrounded him, making him feel small in comparison. The leader, the man with silver hair, leaned forward slightly. His gaze was intense. "Earlier today, you gave a coffee to someone outside, didn't you?" "A homeless man." John blinked in surprise. "Yes, I did. Why?" "Did something happen?" he asked, feeling a knot form in his stomach. No, the man didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied John for a moment. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke again. "That man, the one you helped. He's connected to someone very important. More than you know." John's brow furrowed. He didn't understand. "I just gave him a cup of coffee. That's all," he said quietly. The man nodded. "Yes, but sometimes a small act can lead to much bigger things. You'll understand soon enough." John sat there, confused and uneasy. What were they talking about? Why would something as simple as giving coffee to a homeless man attract this kind of attention? Before he could ask more, the man stood up. "We'll be in touch soon," he said, leaving a business card on the table. Then, just as quickly as they had appeared, the men in suits left the cafe, the door closed behind them with a soft click, and silence filled the room. John stared down at the card, his hands slightly shaking. The name on it was unfamiliar, but the company logo was one he recognized. It was a major corporation, one that had nothing to do with cafes or homeless shelters. What was going on? And what did it all mean for him? John couldn't shake the feeling of unease as he tucked the business card into his apron pocket. The men in suits had left just as quickly as they'd come, but their presence lingered in his mind. What could they possibly want with him? The rest of his shift felt like a blur. He served coffee, cleaned tables, smiled at customers, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the conversation, the homeless man, and the strange connection that had been hinted at. He knew there was more to the story, but he had no idea what it could be. When his shift finally ended, John stepped outside into the chilly evening air. He glanced down the street, half expecting to see the men in suits watching him from the shadows. But the street was empty, quiet, just like any other night. He reached into his pocket, pulling out the business card again. The logo, bold and unmistakable, belonged to a company he had heard of before, but it wasn't the kind of company that had anything to do with him. They were into high-profile investments, mergers, and big deals. What did they want with a barista from a small cafe? John's curiosity got the better of him. He decided to search for the company online when he got home. Maybe there would be something, anything, that could explain the strange encounter. Later that night, sitting at his... Was this real? Why would they do something like this? He had only given the man a cup of coffee. Surely this was some kind of mistake. John sank into a chair, the check still in his hand. His thoughts raced. Who was that homeless man? Why would a simple gesture lead to something so huge? It didn't make sense. The next morning, John couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. He looked at the check again, still unsure if he should cash it, but his curiosity got the better of him. He decided to contact the number printed on the business card the man had left behind. Later that day, he dialed the number. His heart pounded as the phone rang. A professional voice answered, "Good afternoon. You've reached the office of Mr. Carter. How can we assist you?" John cleared his throat, trying to sound calm. "Yes, my name is John. I was told to call this number regarding an envelope I received." There was a brief pause, then the voice responded, Mr. Carter has been expecting your call. Please hold for a moment." John's pulse quickened. A few seconds later, a familiar voice came on the line. It was the same man who had come into the cafe. "John, I'm glad you called. We hoped you would." John swallowed hard. "Look, I'm really grateful for the gesture, but I don't understand why. Why would you give me something like this?" "It was just a cup of coffee." The man on the other end chuckled softly. "It's never just a cup of coffee. The man you helped, he's someone very close to Mr. Carter. In fact, he is Mr. Carter." John's breath caught. "What? The homeless man? He's the CEO." "Yes," the man replied, his voice steady. "Mr. Carter has a habit of going unnoticed. Blending in with the crowds, he likes to see how people react when they think no one's watching. Most people ignore him, but not you. You didn't hesitate to show kindness, and that's why we're offering you an opportunity." John's mind was spinning. An opportunity? What kind of opportunity? There was a pause. Then the man spoke again, his tone serious. "Mr. Carter wants to meet with you. He believes someone like you, with your heart, could do more than just make coffee. He's offering you a position within his company, something that could change your life." John sat in stunned silence. Was this really happening? Could a simple act of kindness have led to something like this? "We'll be in touch to arrange the details," the man continued. "But for now, consider this a gesture of our gratitude for seeing the humanity in someone that others might overlook." Before John could respond, the line went dead. He sat there for a long moment, staring at the phone in his hand. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions, gratitude, disbelief, hope. The following days passed in a blur for John. His life, which had once been filled with routine and monotony, now felt like it was on the verge of something much bigger. He couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The envelope, the conversation on the phone, and the fact that the homeless man he had given coffee to was the CEO of a major corporation. True to their word, the men in suits reached out to John again. This time, they arranged for him to meet with Mr. Carter himself. John stepped into the towering building where Mr. Carter was waiting for him. Standing before the vast glass entrance, he felt overwhelmed, clutching the business card tightly in his hand. A receptionist greeted him with a warm smile and guided him to the top floor. As the elevator doors opened, John sensed a shift in the atmosphere. It wasn't just luxury, it was a space where decisions held the power to change lives. He was led into a large meeting room where Mr. Carter, the man he had once seen huddled on the street, now stood with an air of dignity and warmth. "John, you've arrived. I'm glad to meet you here officially," Mr. Carter said, extending his hand. John, slightly hesitant, returned the gesture, smiling nervously. "Mr. Carter, I don't know why I'm here. I'm just a barista. What I did that day was nothing special." Mr. Carter chuckled softly, his gaze filled with encouragement. "John, what you did isn't something everyone would do. Not everyone sees a human being behind a weary face, and not everyone chooses to act. Sometimes the smallest acts make the biggest difference, not just for others, but for yourself as well." Mr. Carter then shared a glimpse of his past, describing his own days living on the streets. He spoke of how he longed for someone to acknowledge him as a person, not a burden. "Your small gesture reminded me that kindness still exists, even in the smallest corners of life," he said. John sat quietly, absorbing Mr. Carter's words, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. "So, what do you want me to do here? I'm not sure I'm suited for any role in a company as big as this." "You don't need to fit in right away," Mr. Carter replied. "I want you to learn, to grow, and most importantly, to keep that kind heart of yours. Our company needs people like you, those who not only work hard, but also see the true value of humanity." Mr. Carter handed John a folder containing an official job offer. He explained that the position wasn't about John's skills, but his compassion. He assured him that he would start small, but the path ahead was full of opportunities. Holding the folder, John's eyes lit up. He looked up at Mr. Carter and said, "Thank you, not just for this opportunity, but for showing me that sometimes even the smallest actions can lead to something extraordinary." As John left the building that day, his heart brimmed with hope. He realized that life isn't always about grand gestures. It's the small acts of kindness that can illuminate paths we never knew existed. His story stands as a living testament to the power of compassion. Even the smallest actions can plant the seeds for something extraordinary. Believe in the power of kindness, because sometimes what seems like the smallest gesture can change a life forever. Love this story? Tap that like button and subscribe to Life's Touching Stories for more. Let us know how this story made you feel with a single word in the comments.